The settlement on Kepler 442b had been quiet for 3 standard months. Too quiet, some said. The human colonists had learned to read the silence of alien worlds, and this particular silence felt wrong, like the held breath before a scream. Amira didn't understand such things. At 7 years old, her world consisted of simpler concerns. The collection of smooth stones near the Hab Dome, the way the twin suns cast double shadows, and the 2 furry creatures that had adopted her family 6 weeks ago. Her parents called them cubs, though no earth animal matched their description exactly. Rock and Viri were the size of large dogs covered in slate-gray fur that shimmered like oil on water. Their eyes, 4 each arranged in pairs, glowed with an intelligence that unnerved most adults. But to Amira, they were simply her friends. She'd found them, or perhaps they'd found her near the forest line. Orphan, the xenobiologist said. Dangerous, the security chief warned. But when Amira looked into those 8 eyes, she saw only loneliness that matched her own. Being the only child in a colony of scientists and engineers was its own kind of isolation. The attack came during the day cycle, which made it worse somehow. Attacks were supposed to happen at night. Amira had wandered beyond the perimeter fence, not far, just far enough to reach a patch of blue flowers that glowed softly in the double sunlight. Rock and Viri followed as they always did, silent shadows at her heels. She heard the clicking first. A sound like stones grinding together, rhythmic and purposeful. Language, she would later learn. The creche communicated through carefully modulated clicks and hisses. 3 of them emerged from the crystalline rock formations. They stood on 4 legs, but their torsos rose upright, giving them a centaur-like appearance. Their exoskeletons were the color of dried blood, segmented and hard. Each possessed 6 arms, 4 ending in blade-like appendages, 2 in manipulator claws. The creche had been observing the human colony since its establishment, watching, waiting, calculating whether these soft-skinned bipeds represented threat or opportunity. The child alone in the field made their decision easier. Amira froze. Every instinct her parents had drilled into her screamed at her to run, but her legs wouldn't obey. The creatures moved closer, their clicking growing faster, more excited. One extended a blade arm, tilting it in the sunlight, testing its edge perhaps, or displaying it. The lead creche, larger than the others, its exoskeleton marked with white scars, made a decision. It charged. Rock moved first. The cub was a gray blur, launching from a standstill with explosive force that seemed impossible for his size. He struck the lead creche at its center mass, and the impact made a sound like thunder. The alien tumbled backward, its blade arms flailing. Viri followed half a second later, but she didn't charge. She phased. One moment she was beside Amira. The next, she simply wasn't, and then she was again. Materialized behind the second creche. Her jaws clamped onto the joint where the creature's torso met its rear legs. The creche shrieked, a sound that would haunt Amira's dreams for years, and collapsed. The third creche hesitated. Fatal mistake. Rock had already recovered from his charge, and now the humans watching from the colony, through long-range sensors, saw what Amira had somehow always known. These weren't cubs. They were predators, apex predators. Rock's fur rippled, and suddenly he was larger, not growing exactly, but expanding as if he'd been compressed and was now assuming his true form. He stood nearly as tall as the creche, his 4 eyes blazing with bioluminescent fury. When he roared, it wasn't the sound of any earth animal. It was something older, something that evolution had coded into prey species across the galaxy. The sound of death coming. The third creche ran. Viri phased again, appearing directly in its path. She didn't attack, just stood there, eyes locked on the fleeing alien. The creche tried to stop, to turn, but its momentum betrayed it. It skidded into Viri's space, and she simply looked at it. The creche's exoskeleton began to crack. Not from impact or force, but from within, as if its own biology was turning against it. It collapsed, clicking frantically, and didn't rise. The lead creche, injured but not defeated, made a strategic retreat. Rock let it go, watching with those 8 unblinking eyes as it dragged itself back toward the rock formations. Then both cubs turned to Amira. The fury drained from them in an instant, and they were small again, just slightly larger than they'd been moments before. Rock nudged her hand with his broad head. Viri pressed against her side, purring, if the subsonic vibration she produced could be called purring. The security team arrived 7 minutes later, weapons ready, expecting to find a child's body. Instead, they found Amira sitting in the blue flowers, arms wrapped around two impossible creatures, all three of them shaking. The xenobiologist's report was filed 3 days later. The species' tentatively designated protector forms appear to bond with young of other species through mechanisms we don't yet understand. Once bonded, they will defend their charge with extreme prejudice. The cubs, though we must cease calling them that, as they are clearly adolescents of a species we barely comprehend, demonstrated abilities including density manipulation, localized teleportation, and what can only be described as directed biological interference. The creche attacked because they perceived humans as weak. They fled because they learned otherwise, not because of our technology or our weapons, but because humanity had formed an alliance with something far more dangerous than ourselves. This, I believe, is humanity's true strength, not our tools, not our intellect, but our inexplicable ability to befriend the monsters. Amira never wandered beyond the perimeter again. She didn't need to. Rock and Viri stayed with her family for 8 more years, until they were full-grown and standing taller than the Habdomes. By then, no hostile force dared approach the colony, and when other human settlements across the galaxy began reporting similar bonds with impossible creatures, xenobiologists coined a new term, the companion phenomenon. Humans, it seemed, had a gift, the ability to find family in the unlikeliest places. The creche never returned to Kepler 442b. Their warning spread through the galactic community. The humans are weak, yes, but they are never alone, and those who stand with them are not weak at all.